Alright guys, welcome along to Here's Rodder's Reviews. I'm your host Rodney Stewart, and we're getting into a little bit more of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe on this episode. But yes, it's been a while since I done an episode on this series, and I do apologise. Such a good show. And weirdly, every time I go to this box set, particularly for this review series, I tend to come across the episode that I'm watching. I tend to come across the fact that as old as this show was right now, like I dread to actually think how old these shows are that I grew up with. You're talking 30 years plus at this point. And even now, today, in 2022, I watched this episode right here, which was The Temple of the Sun, and each episode has the moral of the story, and one of the characters will actually break the fourth wall at the end of the episode and actually, tell you what the moral you're supposed to have learned was within the story if you didn't get it yourself. And this one here, very much relevant to current life right now, and what I've been living and what I've been witnessing with people and environments. It's for a show that is as old as He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is. 1983, if memory serves right. Yep, that this came out, and right now it's as relevant today as it was back then. But in this episode, we get to meet this little character, and he is out for the power that he thinks he deserves in life. And it's another episode where the Rogues Gallery isn't there. That's one thing I was actually really surprised at going back to watch this series again. You think He-Man, Skeletor, like you have a memory that every episode it was them pair fighting against each other, but there's an unreal amount of episodes within the original run of the series where Skeletor wasn't even in it. So yes, in this one here we get to meet a guy called Nepfu. He's crawling his way through the desert at the beginning of this episode, and it's the Sands of Time that it's called, and he comes across this structure that he's been hunting for goodness knows how long, and he's looking for the Sun Scarab, which will grant him the power that he thinks that he deserves. And he does find it very swiftly. Get into the episode. Back at the palace, Man-at-Arms is waiting on word from Orko, who's went to Castle Grayskull. He has created a communications device, a communicator, and he sent Orko over there so that they can test us, see if our walkie-talkies are working. And he gets there. There's no sign of the sorceress. And back at the palace, Tila is trying to teach Prince Adam some combat techniques and jumps over like a pommel horse, and of course he's messing up as usual, just more or less to keep up the facade that he's Prince Adam and not He-Man. She doesn't know this, of course, and that played a big part in the new Kevin Smith version of He-Man. And whether you like Kevin Smith or not, that series actually deserves a lot of respect. For somebody that grew up with the original, that definitely was a good continuation from it. But that's another subject for another time. But within this episode right here, they discover that the sorceress isn't at Grayskull, and we discover she's out in flight as Zor, and she's actually gone over the top of the Sands of Time and senses magic, and she goes to investigate, and she pretty much gets shot out of the sky by Neptune, who has transformed himself into this younger version of himself, more muscular and whatnot, and strong. And the first time you meet him in the episode, he's an old man, long hair and a beard, and he's got no size to him. He's very, very weedy and small, and the Sun Scarab transforms him into this huge person, and he's got all this magical energy. And he shoots Zor out of the sky, just thinking that it's just a normal bird, not for a second thinking that it was actually the sorceress of Greyskull. So she's knocked out under his power, and the power of the Sun Scarab is very strong, which is able to use her telepathy to call Prince Adam, who, along with Man-at-Arms, comes to the rescue. Now, a great part in this episode that I really, really did enjoy was the relationship between Prince Adam and Cringer is always good for a bit of entertainment, and the relationship between their alter egos, He-Man and Battlecat, are always good for a bit of entertainment. But in this episode, He-Man, of course, Sword of Power out, calls in the power of Greyskull, changes to He-Man, and before he gets a chance to call on Battlecat, Cringer stops him, and he's like, you know what, this time, let me go as Cringer. I don't like being Battlecat. Maybe if I go as Cringer, I could bring some common sense to the whole situation. So He-Man gladly lets him stay as Cringer, and off they go and attack track. And they no sooner get to the sands of time to, Cringer starts to turn into Anakin Skywalker because he doesn't like the sand and it gets everywhere, essentially. So, yes, they start to get attacked by this giant whirlwind, which they call like a dust devil, and it sucks Cringer up, and He-Man, to stop the tornado, gets into the bottom of it and starts with the Sword of Power spinning in the opposite direction to take the strength out of it, and he manages to stop it and throw it off into space, as he does, being He-Man, and Cringer falls to the ground and then makes the humble choice to, you know what, I was wrong, make me Battlecat. So he gets transformed, and shortly after that they're attacked by a huge scorpion-like creature, and we get a wee science lesson from He-Man when Man-at-Arms and Battlecat keeping this thing occupied. He's using as strength and speed to rub the sand that hard that he can turn it to glass. So they give you a little science lesson in the middle of this episode as well on how glass is formed, and he uses that to contain this creature. And off they go to try to get into this temple of the sun to stop whoever's in there with the Sun Scarab. And there, the guy, he has created his own little army of creatures out of sand, essentially, Nephu, and he's, constantly talking to the sorceress, still not realising who she is, and he's doing his evil villain, James Bond villain sort of speech to her, what he's going to do, and he's going to take and he's going to make her the mascot of his new kingdom and whatnot, and she manages to break free and tries to escape, and he turns her into Diamond. At this point, He-Man gets in there, and he's fighting against him, and Battlecat are fighting against these creatures, but through telepathy, the sorceress has let them know that these aren't actually living beings, these creatures. They're just simply animated sand. So it was always a big thing in these old shows here that, nobody died. And that was the big change that came whenever Kevin Smith did the continuation. It was for an audience that had grown up since He-Man and the Masters of the Universe back in '83. But back then, there was always everybody survived, essentially, unless there were robots or something that was, animated in a artificial way. So in this episode, we've got creatures made out of sand, so He-Man can take them, kill them, essentially, but not kill them, as they're not living creatures. It is what it is. He manages to get rid of all them, along with the help of Battlecat, and Nephew tries to take him out using the power of the sun scarab, but while he's concentrating on He-Man, he doesn't see Man-at-Arms above him. Man-at-Arms manages to lasso the scarab out of his hand and throws it over to He-Man, who says to him, like, you know what? You had a item here of unlimited power. You could have used it for good, and you didn't. So it ends now, and he takes the Sword of Power and destroys the Sun Scarab with it. And Nephew is returned back to his original form that he was at the beginning of the episode. We cut to the end of the episode, and they're in Castle Grayskull. He-Man's now changed back to Prince Adam, and he's talking about, it's a good job that we managed to stop Nephew and destroy the Sun Scarab, and the sorceress reveals that she actually restored the Sun Scarab and returned it to Nephew, who's now looking after the flowers in the forest, essentially, and he's learned his lesson by the end of the episode, and he has this item of sheer power that he could use at any point to take over the universe. But he's learned his lesson that well that he's able to take the Sun Scarab and use it for something as good as water and flowers at the end of the episode. It's a very good story for the kids to learn, and as I said, the moral at the end of the episode, one of the characters will break the fourth wall. This time it's He-Man, who says, I'm just going to read it to you here, I've got it screenshotted. Today we met Nephew, a man who wanted to become a leader, and he wanted to become a leader, but Nephew used his leadership for his own selfish glory, and in the end he got what he deserved. But you must also be responsible when you follow a leader. Don't do something wrong or dangerous because someone tells you to. Think before you act. We can't all be leaders, but we can all choose what's right and wrong for ourselves. So again, that moral at the end of this episode really plays a major way into something that I've personally dealt with in the last week. They say power can corrupt some people, and you get to see examples of that quite a bit in today's world, unfortunately, but it is what it is. This episode was actually fantastic. I enjoyed it so much. The comedy moments between, for a change, He-Man and Cringer. As I say, it's usually Prince Adam and Cringer, or He-Man and Battle Cat. This is the first time, if memory serves properly, this is the first time in the run of the original series where these two characters had such a interaction face to face. Even though they're the same person, just in different forms. But it's either one or the other. It's never, a mixture of the two. So I enjoyed it. Fantastic. Such a good series, and one that I am so happy and contented that I actually have a copy of them on DVD, because this is something here that, I've got no children. I probably will never have any kids. The chances of that happening now are very, very slim. But if tomorrow something happened, I met someone, settled down, and we had a kid, first thing they're going on to whenever they're born and start growing up, and you need to learn them some life lessons. This here, you cannot go wrong with He-Man and the Masters of the Universe from 1983. The stories and morals that we learned from that show as kids are still serving me to this day. And as you get older, you tend to forget a lot of the stuff that you learned back then, but going through the episodes again, you're starting to see some aspects of yourself that have been ingrained into you from childhood, and you can trace for me in particular, I can trace a heck of a lot. I had two of the best parents on the face of the planet that taught me a lot of good morals, a lot of good integrity, and on top of all they learned me, there's a lot of stuff that I'm seeing in this series that I'm just like, wow, this definitely had a bigger impact on me as a kid than I gave it credit for. So fantastic. That's going to do it for this episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you on the next episode.